Your husband's away. The house feels like a ghost town, and then his best friend shows up. Backward cap, takeout in hand, and a vibe that's way too electric. Late night talks get heavy, glances linger, and suddenly you're asking yourself, what if? I was slumped on the couch, legs tucked under me, picking at the frayed edge of a faded gray throw blanket that smelled faintly of last winter's firewood. The house felt hollow, like it was holding its breath. Nothing but the low hum of the fridge and the occasional whoosh of a car slicing through the damp street outside. John had been gone 4 days, off on some work trip that sounded half business, half bar hopping, and the silence was starting to claw at me. I'd spent the afternoon scrolling through my phone, then staring at the ceiling, wondering why the quiet felt so loud. That's when the knock came, sharp, quick, like it knew I needed pulling out of my own head. I shuffled to the door, socks scuffing the hardwood, and there was Ethan, leaning against the frame with that easy slouch of his. Rain glistened on the shoulders of his navy jacket, and a faint whiff of something sharp, cedar, maybe, or pine, hit me as he stepped inside without waiting for an invite. In his hand was a bottle of red wine, the label peeling at one corner, and he flashed that grin, crooked, warm, the kind that made you feel like he'd already figured you out. "Thought you might need some company," he said, kicking off his sneakers by the door, leaving little wet smudges on the mat. His voice had that low, lazy drawl I'd always liked, nothing forced, just steady. I mumbled something about not expecting anyone, but he was already halfway to the living room, like he owned the place. I trailed after him, tugging my oversized sweater down over my hands, suddenly aware of the chipped blue mug still sitting on the counter from breakfast, and the stack of unopened mail I'd been ignoring. He plopped onto the couch, my couch, like it was his, stretching his legs out, the backward cap on his head, tilting just enough to show a mess of dark hair underneath. I grabbed 2 glasses from the kitchen, the cheap kind with faint scratches from too many dishwasher runs, and set them on the coffee table, a scratched-up relic from some thrift store haul years back. The wine glugged out, dark and rich, staining the inside of the glasses as we clinked them together, the sound sharp against the stillness. Conversation kicked off like it always did with Ethan, effortless, a little messy. He asked about work, and I vented about my boss's latest micromanaging spree, how she'd emailed me at 8 p.m. about a spreadsheet like it was life or death. He laughed, head tipping back, and countered with a story about his own coworker who'd accidentally CC'd the whole office on a rant about the coffee machine. Then we slid into mutual friends, how Sarah was still posting cryptic Instagram stories, how Mike's new girlfriend seemed way too normal for him. Ethan tossed in a guess about John, probably charming some bartender in Denver with that lopsided smile of his, and I nodded, picturing it too easily. It was the kind of talk that felt like slipping into an old jacket, comfortable, familiar, no edges. Before I knew it, I was laughing harder than I had all week, the kind of laugh that shakes loose the dust in your chest. Ethan had that knack, that vibe, like he could flip any moment into something lighter, brighter, without even trying. He was charming in a way I'd never really clocked before, not like this. Genuinely nice, too, not the fake kind people slap on to impress you. But then, as the wine dwindled and the room warmed up, something shifted, subtle, slow, like a shadow creeping across the floor. He started leaning in when I talked. Not a lot, just enough. His hazel eyes locking onto mine, soaking up every word like it mattered more than it should. They were deep, those eyes, flecked with gold under the dim glow of the lamp in the corner, and they didn't waver. It hit me square in the chest, that look, made my skin prickle, my breath catch for half a second. It felt good, fresh, like a breeze cutting through stale air. I hadn't vibed like that in ages, not with John gone, not with the house so empty. At one point, I was mid-sentence, something dumb about a podcast I'd binged, and his gaze hung on me a beat too long, not unspoken but alive, crackling in the space between us like static. I shook it off, hard. It's the wine, Emily, I told myself, swirling the last sip in my glass, watching it catch the light. Or the quiet house messing with your head. He's John's best friend. Chill out. It was ridiculous, right? Ethan was just being a solid friend. I kept telling myself that, sprawled on the couch with the TV humming in the background. No need to make a mountain out of a molehill. Later that evening, as I stabbed at my microwave dinner, my phone lit up. Ethan. Had a blast last night. Hope I didn't overstay my welcome. My pulse kicked up a notch, and I couldn't figure out why. I fumbled with a reply, typing and deleting, before landing on, "Not at all, dude. It was cool having you around." Minutes later, he shot back, "Sweet. Thinking of swinging by tomorrow if you're free. No pressure." My gut twisted, half thrilled, half guilty. Part of me wanted to shut it down, dodge whatever this was brewing into. But the other part, the one that had been staring at empty walls for days, that part was all in. Nothing's gonna happen, I promised myself. Just a chill hang. "Sure, tomorrow's good," I texted back before my brain could overanalyze it. The next day zipped by in a haze of jitters. I caught myself hyping up Ethan's visit, excitement clashing with a weird dread. Was I setting myself up for a mess? Or was this all in my head? By evening, when Ethan rolled up, he had a greasy bag of takeout in hand, his backward cap tilted just right. We parked ourselves at the kitchen table, the smell of burgers and fries filling the air as neon light from the street buzzed through the window. We'd done this a million times with John, but tonight, the vibe was electric. Every laugh, every quick glance, it hit different, like we both knew something was simmering but wouldn't dare say it out loud. As the night stretched on, I couldn't shake it. Ethan's pull. It was thrilling, scary, and way too cozy all at once. His tan skin glowed under the dim kitchen light, same as always, and I found myself wondering, what if things were different? What if we weren't tied down? Before I could stop myself, it slipped out. "Ethan, you ever think about what'd happen if we weren't, locked in with other people?" His eyes widened, caught off guard but not totally shocked. A beat of silence hung heavy before he answered, voice low and steady. "Yeah, Em, more than I probably should." My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't expected that. Guilt crashed over me like a cold wave. "Oh man, I'm sorry," I blurted, fumbling. "Shouldn't have said that." Ethan shook his head. "Quick. No, don't sweat it. I felt it too. But you and John, that's untouchable." His words landed hard, loaded with everything we were dancing around. I nodded, the weight of it sinking in. "Yeah," I whispered. "I love John." "I know," Ethan said, soft but firm, "and I'd never mess with that. But being around you, it's tough sometimes." We sat there, the silence thick, both of us chewing on the truth we just let slip. The line between just friends and something more was blurry now, and we were teetering way too close to it. Ethan shot up suddenly, raking a hand through his short black hair. I should bounce before we do something dumb. I couldn't even speak, just nodded as he headed out. The door clicked shut, and the house felt like a hollow shell. I was drowning in a mess of feelings I couldn't untangle. Next morning, I woke up with relief and regret slugging it out in my chest. Good thing we'd pumped the brakes before it all went sideways. But that convo, it wouldn't quit replaying. How close we'd come to flipping everything upside down. John called later, his voice all warm and familiar through the phone, chatting about his trip and how he missed me. I tried to play it cool, but guilt gnawed at me like a bad hangover. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to call Ethan, make sure we hadn't torched what we had. "Hey, was. "Yeah, we're fine," he said, but the usual spark in his tone was gone. "You sure? I don't want it to get weird," I pushed, pacing the living room as dusk painted the walls orange. He sighed. "It's not weird, Em, but we gotta watch ourselves. This thing, it's risky." He was dead right. "I know," I said. "I don't want to wreck anything." "Me neither," he shot back. "But it's tough to pretend it's not there." We hung up, and a strange calm settled over me, like we'd closed a chapter. But the story wasn't done. It was the smart move, no doubt, but it didn't feel like I'd won anything. Something had cracked between Ethan and me, and there was no rewinding the tape. The next few days blurred by, a messy swirl of feelings I couldn't pin down. I dove into work, blasting music through my earbuds, trying to drown out that nagging tension with Ethan. But it stuck around, lurking like a shadow. John was set to roll back in 2 days, and I was dead set on burying this mess before he walked through the door. Then, the day before he got home, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, can we talk?" My stomach dropped like a rock. I knew I should have ignored it, but some itchy part of me couldn't let it go. Too much was still up in the air. "Sure," I texted back, nerves buzzing as I hit send. That night, Ethan showed up again, his backward cap tilted low, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. We crashed on the couch, the TV flickering in the corner, but neither of us could look the other in the eye. The weight of our last chat hung thick, pressing down on us. Finally, Ethan broke the quiet, his voice rough. "I'm sorry, Em. I shouldn't have texted. I've been wrestling with this whole thing and didn't know what else to do." I shook my head, staring at the scuffed coffee table. "It's not just you. We both let it spiral." He nodded, his tan skin catching the soft glow of the lamp. Same warm brown as always. "Yeah, but I can't get you out of my head. That's the problem. I don't want to feel this, but I do." My throat tightened, emotions clawing their way up. "We can't, Ethan. It's not right. For John, for us." "I know," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Doesn't make it easier, though." For a second, we just sat there, the pull between us screaming loud and clear. I could feel it, the edge we were teetering on. One step, and there'd be no turning back. Temptation burned, but I couldn't cave. "I can't," I murmured, eyes locked on the floor. "I love John. I won't hurt him." Ethan stood, his face tight but steady. "I get it, and I respect that." He paused at the door, glancing back with those hazel eyes. "For what it's worth, I care about you, Em, but I won't be the guy who wrecks what you've got." Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. When John strolled in the next day, his messy hair flopping over his forehead, I threw my arms around him, squeezing tight. I told myself everything was back to normal, the kitchen buzzing with the smell of his coffee on the go. But deep down, something had shifted. Ethan and I never brought it up again. We faded back into our old roles, John's wife, John's best friend, like nothing ever happened. Still, that unspoken spark we'd danced around, it left a scratch, one we'd both carry quietly. Closing the door on Ethan that night left my heart heavy. We'd dodged a line that could have torched everything. I picked my marriage, but it didn't feel like a clean win. Those stirred-up feelings weren't going anywhere fast. They'd take time to settle. Sometimes, the walls you think are rock solid start to wobble under stuff you don't say out loud. But is sticking to the safe side always enough to keep the trust and love alive? What would you do? Stand firm or risk it all? Drop your take in the comments. I'm dying to hear what you think about this messy vibe. Hit subscribe if you're into these kinds of stories.